Oh, hi. Are you here for the fun question? Me too. The Fun Question, a show where we explore the strange and powerful ways people engage in a life of fun. I'm your host, Dr. David Thomas, the professor of fun, coming to you live from my hidden lair, and back for another conversation of playful exploration. My guest today is Denver-based magician, experience designer, and immersive producer, James Lopez. I asked James on the show to pull back the curtain on the role of magic in society, where, thanks to AI, everything seems a little mystical, and the impossible has been made possible. As a working performer, I wanted James on to help break down the appeal of magic, what makes it fun, and why, as often as not, real artists stare down their noses at magic creators. With that, let's dive into the arcane arts with James. All right, James, welcome to the program. I appreciate having you on. Now, I just want folks to know I've known you for a long time, and I wanted to relate an anecdote, and you should remember this. We were sitting at a bar a long time ago, and we were at a
That's pretty
table with
normal
a.
for us, but okay.
What's that?
I said that's pretty normal for us. You have to remind me
Yeah,
when.
sitting at a bar, true. Yeah, so that's fun. But sitting at a bar, and as I recall, an actor there, there was an opera singer, and there was a saxophone player, and it was this conversation about the role of magic in society, and I said, okay. See that table over there, the strangers? If I walked over to that table and I said, hey, I have these four performers over here, and for free, one of them will walk over and do some art for you. You can have a magician do a magic trick. You can have the opera singer sing you a little libretto. We can have the sax player do a little sax solo. Or we can have the theater person do a little kind of scene. What would you choose? And I think everyone at the table agreed. Well, of course, they'd want to see a magic trick. So what I'm interested in, James, is why is it that magic is so appealing to people, but at the same time, it's always given like, well, it's an inferior art. It's not as important as the arts. What's going on with that?
Yeah, it's this weird conversation that I feel like we have a lot, even like in this scene and industry. A lot of it is that like magic is trying to like become credible again, right? So we have a bunch of TV shows that are accessible for it now. We have a bunch of people who are starting to get famous with it. You have like Shin Lim, David Blaine,
Mm-hmm.
Justin Willman got to work with, the Adult Swim guys, right? Tim and Eric. So there's like legitimacy of going on with it, right? But for years and years and years, it never was seen like that. And it's always been that like this weird contradiction thing of everybody wants to see magic, but nobody respects magic, right? And so I think really what it comes down to is that because magic is accessible, and I'll explain this kind of more in detail of what it is, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it comes down to the fact that magic is accessible because it accesses our childlike wonder, right? It gets us the ability to experience something for the first time like we did as a kid. It gives us that warm, fuzzy feeling on the inside, but because there's everything is hidden in secrecy, people don't understand the skill that's required to actually do it. They see everything on this like very surface and shallow level, whereas like with opera, all these other things are like, oh, there's a technical prowess and know-how that needs to be done to do this well. Whereas in magic, it's this weird thing where it's accessible, but it isn't accessible, and it's fun, but it's also not fun.
Okay,
And I
so
think
you're saying
that's
there's a
interesting.
couple things there. You're
Yeah.
saying that you think part of the magic is just it's a childlike kind of appeal, and people want to have they want it to be like whiskey. They want it to really burn. They want their art to hurt a little bit. Magic doesn't hurt enough. So I think there's one thing
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's
and then
not
yeah.
as much perceived sacrifice or effort that's being put in for it to hurt, for it to be good.
Okay, so that's part of it, and you think the other part of it is they can't see the skill or the the technique that it takes. So if people go to Phantom of the Opera, probably a very fun thing to go see, they can be like, "Wow, they have this giant chandelier that falls," or "Wow, that's really hard to sing like that," and so they kind of appreciate it more. So you think those two things are operating against magic.
Correct, yeah.
So then I would just say, as a performer, how do you break through that? Do you just give up on credibility? Do you just run around amusing people, bringing childlike wonder to their lives?
It's this weird thing. There's this Spanish magician, Gabby Paredes, that talks a lot about this, of this idea of like, um, we our job as magicians is to basically take someone on a journey, right? So we meet them wherever they're at, and we explore what they want to explore. We navigate this
Hmm.
conversation and this interaction and weave them down what's called the magical path, right? Our job is simply to be like facilitators and storytellers, narrators, that move them into a space where they're willing to believe in the impossible, right? Or to suspend their belief just enough to be able to see the world a little bit differently. So a lot of the times there are different ways to interpret that, and there's good magicians and bad magicians who do it. Bad magicians are basically just, we want to hit you over the head with as many card tricks as we can, thinking
Hmm.
eventually a card trick will impress you as much as it impressed us, right? But what a good magician does is that they try to pivot the world just slightly, right? And make the world that we exist in, the rules that we know, question those of whether that's actually real or not, right? So there's David, you and I talk about it a lot. Is that there's a magician
Hmm.
that we follow online, an anonymous guy named Andy, who runs a website called The Jerks, and he talks a lot about this of casual magic and the idea that like magic exists in the world around it. It just needs someone needs to be the one observing it, and I think like a good magician is facilitating that observation. So yes, it's about like fooling them, but you can't fool someone until they're ready to be fooled. So that is kind of the initial job, is to get them into a space where they're ready to do that.
So walk me through that. I mean, pick a routine or a trick that you do, or maybe
Sure.
one that you've seen, and just you don't have to reveal any secrets. Just like to talk about how you unfold the experience for someone and make something meaningful for them.
Sure. So when I first meet someone, and this won't reveal too much, but like I'll usually, if I meet someone for the very first time and I'm doing like a meeting with them, what I'll do is I'll give them an envelope before we even start the conversation, and we just have a conversation. So whether it's a business meeting, a personal meeting, of meeting someone, we just kind of like sit around and talk and have this whole entire thing together, and they are holding on to this little envelope the whole time. And at the end of our conversation, what I like to do is then I have them open the envelope, and when they open the envelope, inside of it has the whole entire conversation that we had, or it has a note that or letter that I wrote to them to remind them about the conversation that we had. So it's a
Hmm.
letter I wrote before we even started, right?
Right.
So in that routine there, whenever I start that, it's a way for me just to kind of create memory with them. But what I do is I create interest and I create curiosity at the beginning, right? I hand them the envelopes and create interest in
Ah, the mystery. Yeah, yeah.
mystery, illusion, right? But we don't over acknowledge it, right? We
Hmm.
acknowledge that it exists, we acknowledge that it's there, but we don't oversell it, right? It's just something that exists inside of the world with us. And as the conversation goes, it can go into meander to whatever it wants, but that little thing in their mind will always be itching of like, why did he give me this?
Hmm.
What's
Hmm.
the importance of this? Where does the value of this come from? And then at the end of the conversation, when the envelope is ripped open and it's a letter that responds to everything that we had talked about that whole entire time, right? That then creates this like illusion and wonder of like, did he know what we were going to talk about? Was he just a really good facilitator of conversation, right? Or did something impossible happen in front of my eyes?
Right, right. Well, let me talk about that because I think, we live in the age of wonder. Set magic aside, we think about AI. I mean, all of a sudden you talk to this thing that seems to know more about you than you know about yourself. That can just generate text out of thin air. We have little devices that, give us access to world events on demand. So that
Well, I
that
mean,
kind of sense
I'm
of
wearing my
surprise.
wearable right now. Like I have an aura ring right now,
Yeah,
figuring
it's
out like it's
keeping track of
uncomfortable.
everything. So we live in the age of marvels and wonders. So what's the role of magic now where someone's just like, well, it's probably AI, or it's probably a special effect. Oh, it's probably just a quick cut on a video. Where does magic fit in our world these days?
Well, I think where it fits is that, even though we have access to all of this knowledge and information and that there's tools that we're like starting to now scarily blindly trust, I think what it comes down to is that people want to be fooled, right? It's the idea of
Hmm.
like, even like, an immersive theater, right? When we talk about this, a lot of everything is that people want to be taken away from reality.
And just real quick, immersive theater for people that aren't familiar, it's like interactive or audience kind of centric theater. It could be everything from a magic show to Disneyland, just a place that you're very environmentally absorbed. You're a part of the story. So yeah.
Yeah. There's something innate in our human DNA and generation that we want to be fooled, right? We want to be deceived and we want that like enjoyment. It's like why everybody wants to get scared, right?
Mhm,
You
mhm.
enjoy getting scared because of that ride and titillation of like the up and the down, is that we still want to believe that there's something bigger and better than us, right? This constant search for truth, I think, kind of gets mired, is that it's parallel to what magic does, right? It's like we're constantly searching for truth and trying to find more of it. And it's the same thing that we're doing in magic, but instead of trying to do it from an analytical perspective, we're trying to do it from like a creative perspective, right? Left brain versus right brain type of thing. It's the same goal. But what culture is doing to us is it's making us believe, right, that the logic is where we're supposed to be. But this human innate urge inside of us still is like, no, we want to believe that anything is impossible.
So I like that because that connects back to this broader concept of fun. And without diving too deep into the theory, I think a big part of what makes things fun is there's an opportunity for you to make your own meaning, rather than you're trying to understand the beauty of some painting. You're saying, hey, what does this mean? I don't know. You have to make decisions. I think when we talk about childlike wonder, I always think of that as being that moment where anything is possible. Therefore, I have to make choices. I have to move into the world, which is different than a world where everybody says, be there on time, do this, I want this done by 5 o'clock. And magic's opposite of that because you're experiencing the impossible, right? You see somebody do something you know is impossible, so what does it mean? So I'm curious in that sort of framing, like for you as a magician, what brought you into the world of magic? I mean, why was that kind of play or that kind of fun appealing to you?
It was what was really interesting was when I first started in magic, because I loved the puzzle, right? So I used to watch magic specials all the time online, or
Hmm.
I remember my one of the first magic shows I ever went to was the Amazing Randy in Las Vegas. Now, again, you should not go see that as a 12-year-old, right? But it was like a great show to go see.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, I really, really liked and was fascinated by the puzzle of how do you do that, right? So for me, it was like really cool to see like the performance of it, but I was like, clearly something else is going on, and I want to know what's going on. What is the back and forth that makes that happen, right? Which is really cool. And so when I first started reading magic books, that's what really kind of like I wanted to understand like how they got from point A to point B. So like you take the cards in your hand, you put the card in somewhere, you slip the card out, and then you secretly hide the card in another place without anyone able to see that. I was like, that was
Hmm.
really cool to me, and seeing like the logical structure of how something worked. Right,
Yeah.
that balanced and scratched the itch in my logical side of my brain, but still allowed me to be creative because of what was presented publicly.
Hmm.
After that, like once I started to learn that, I realized you actually had to learn the technique of it, right? Because I always thought you could just learn tricks, and that's the difference between a good trick and a bad trick. If somebody learns a trick, right, that's a bad trick. Because somebody just learns how to do a trick, they don't understand the subtlety of
Sure.
it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? A good trick is someone who understands all of the technique that goes inside of it, of like how you hold the deck of cards, the pinky count, right? How you palm a card, all that type of stuff. Um, so I really started to go and dive deep into technique because there's just a million different ways to hold a deck of cards and move a card from the top or bottom of the deck. And that really started again fascinate me of the complexity, right, of this art form of like there's a million different ways to accomplish the same thing to be able to do it.
So this
And
is
then
like the ballet of the art form, like
yeah, the
just the
ballet of the art.
muscle, the technique. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yep, you're learning the technique, you're doing all of that, and then realizing when you put both of those together in front of an audience to perform for it, that's what turned me into a professional, was the excitement of seeing how all of these elements and skills that I work so hard on to look like I'm doing absolutely nothing creates a moment of impossibility for an audience. Like there's nothing more satisfying than seeing an audience member like the eyes light up or the brain shut down because they can't logic their way through it, to be able to do it, right? And that to me, there's this thing I always talk about in magic is most magicians that you see are what I call the warm fuzzy feeling chasers, right? And say they saw a magic trick as a kid that gave them a warm fuzzy feeling. And
Hmm.
to replicate that feeling for themselves, they've decided, oh, I just need to perform for other people, and that will create the same warm fuzzy feeling as I saw magic, right? That's not how we should be looking at it. I like making that warm fuzzy feeling for people, right? That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
difference. And I really enjoy giving that experience to people for them just to have joy.
Yeah, talk to me about that because I know one of the banes of certain kinds of magic is the fact that the technique is hidden and it does take a level of mastery, and that you can become obsessed with the power of knowing the secret. How do you keep from becoming the kind of magician that really does magic because they get to show you how smart and clever they are? It's to be the ballet dancer that shows you how much better in shape they are than you. I mean, how do you make sure that you're focused on the audience rather than your own kind of like puzzle solving, secret hoarding kind of magical self?
I think there's a moment, and I feel like this is like for most performers, right? When you go from like doing the art for the art form's sake versus doing the art for commercialization, right? Or making money to be able to do that, is that you realize like 90%, I'm gonna get in so much trouble for this, and I'll even show you because I have a huge library just sitting right
Yeah.
out of frame, right, of all these books I have, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
90% of what we learn is unusable, right? It's
Okay.
it's all self-indulgent, skill showing off kind of like stuff to be able to do it. Is that you realize is that the technique is not as important as the effect, right? So you
Well,
learn all of these.
explain that real quick, just for people that aren't familiar. The difference in magic between method and effect.
Sure. So the effect is what the audience sees, and the method is how we achieve that. So if I take a card, I put it into the middle of the deck, I lose the card by shuffling it, and then your card appears on the top of the deck, right? That's the effect. The method is that there is, I kid you not, actually, let me get the book.
He disappeared from the frame. If
Here
you're
from the frame.
listening, yeah.
Just to give you context, right? So to give you framing of this is that this is the size of all this book is about.
It's a book is an inch and a half thick,
Inch
two
and a
inch
half,
book.
two
Yeah.
inches thick, right? Book of how to do that, right? So this is the method here, right? And
Mhm.
there's a million different ways to be able to do that. The effect is what the audience sees. And you realize that like there are certain methods you have to do for certain scenarios, right? Because of like angles and all those other things. But what you start to realize is that none of that really matters because not the audience never sees that stuff, right? So you realize like you can make more of an impact with less effort, right? The less I have to think about what I'm doing in my hands, the more I have the ability to be focusing on my audience and make it fun for them, right? If we're talking about fun, the fun is being in the moment. It's being present when you're with a live magician watching an experience. If I'm so focused on the technique of what I'm doing, right? You'll see this in a lot of like newer musicians, right, or bands and everything, is that when they're so
Yeah.
focused on the technique, they lose out on the audience engagement. Whereas
Mhm.
most of the best
Mhm.
shows you ever see is like when Pearl Jam is just like playing the music, but then they're bullshitting on stage, right, with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So there, you get to be a part of that whole environment or that bigger feel. Well, I wonder about magic, and I also would like to kind of return to that hesitation that people have, especially adults. I mean, I don't think a kid will think twice if you say you want to see a magic trick. Although I've noticed this, if we're at a party or an event or something, and I introduce this is James, he's a magician, and I say, "Do you want to see a trick?" Nobody turns away. They're like, "Oh, show me a trick," right? So I know that inherently there's something like we can't stop watching magic. But what is it? What is that adult hesitation? Like why if I'm going to take a lady out and I say, "Hey, let's go see a movie," that sounds good. If I say, "Let's go see a magic show," it might be like, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
maybe.
There's definitely two things that go on with it. So there is one of people don't want to be made the fool, right?
Okay.
I think the big, like, it all comes back down to this, but people don't want to be made the fool. And a lot of the times when they experience magic, the performers, or if they experience it with someone, right, who's a beginner and showing just magic tricks and everything, is that the audience is set up to be the butt of the joke, right? Or they're set up to be in a position where they feel less than the performer. And because of that feeling, it makes them uncomfortable because that at that point, then they're on guard, right? They take a step back and they can't enjoy the experience because the whole entire thing is now focused on them and focused on their inability to either enjoy the experience, to understand what's going on, all right, or something along those lines. And I think like that, once you experience that once, right, of that negative attention, it's like, well, then I'm turned off because that's how all of the art form is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, And I think that that's really interesting because we talk a lot about that is that if you go see a bad comedy show, right, or you go
Hmm.
see,
Hmm.
God forbid, a bad improv show, right, or you see a bad musician or any of these other things, you don't blame the art form for that, right? You
Ah, yeah,
blame
yeah.
that artist, right, of
They
not being
haven't
funny.
mastered their craft, yeah.
Right.
So,
Or
yeah.
like this was a bad show, I can go see another show. In magic, if you go see a bad magician, now magic is bad in general. Right. And
Mm.
again, it's because of that framing of, well, magic puts me in a bad spot. Right. Versus if I go see a bad show, well, they're bad. But if a magician makes fun of me and I'm the butt of the joke and the audience sees me as that, right? Or I go see a bad magic trick where I want to believe in the impossible and I see something terrible happen, well, then you've just ruined that whole entire ability for me to believe.
Seems like it goes back to that kind of, method and effect, and that the magician's the master of method, and it's all secret method, and so there's this power differential between the audience and the performer, which maybe isn't as much in other art forms. You watch a guitar player and you think, I'm going to go home and learn the guitar. You watch a comedian, you're like going, I could do 2 tight minutes. But you watch magic, and it's just, it does feel like it's a power imbalance, and I don't know how you get past that.
It does, and it's like, it's kind of like the same thing of Wizard of Oz, right? Like when they see the man behind the wizard, right?
Yeah.
Everything falls apart at that point, right? The whole entire thing is like the illusion that we all wanted to believe in completely falls apart, and the whole entire thing is we don't want the wizard to get out and know he's mediocre.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think like in Magic, that's a huge part of it is that they want to trust that this person has put in the effort of the secrets to figure out what it is, right? But the ironic thing is that when we have these secrets, we're not trying to keep secrets from people. I think that that's a misconception a lot of people have in Magic is that we're not trying to keep secrets from you. We keep secrets for you, right? Because
That's a
if
good
you
one.
ever find out that 9 out of 10 of my magic tricks are done with double-sided tape, right? Like you
Right,
would
right.
hate that. That would ruin all of magic for you,
Yeah.
right? But knowing that it's somehow impossible and somehow I made this happen, right? That's what I want to preserve in my secrecy, right? And my reverence for the idea of secrets to share.
Sure, sure. I like that a lot, and I think that makes sense because I think if you look at successful magicians, or probably magicians that you and I would have some respect for in different places, they do it in different ways. So David Copperfield, for example, has a giant theater in Vegas, and he charges you $300 to see a show, and you're bought in on fool me, buddy, right? Like I want you to show me things I've never seen before. I came to see a special effects show. Then you flip over to somebody like Penn and Teller, and back in the old days, they would reveal tricks. They never revealed the whole thing, but they would reveal enough to make you feel like you were part of the con. You were part of the joke. And they
Yeah.
made the audience feel really involved. And even today, what's the name of their show? Their show's not Fool You, it's Fool Us, right? Like the nominal structure of this magic show is that a magician's going to fool them. So we all together get to try to figure out the trick and enjoy it. And with that in mind, I would like to hear, your ideas about magicians. Let's start with that you have a lot of respect for people that you think are a great gateway drug to watching magic. If they can't all come to one of your shows in Denver, like, what's on TV? Where do you go find good magic? And what do you look for? How do you know good magic before you are in the middle of it?
Sure, sure. That's a really good question because again, like magic is so broad. Like it's a really, really hard thing, and I think we just now in the last. I'll tell you this. This is a very well-known secret within inside of the magic community. Magic is anywhere between 10 to 20 years behind any other cultural trend. We are always behind. Right? So when you see a magician, right? So like Chris Angel is a really good example, right? He still looks like he's from the 90s, right? That's
Yeah.
because in magic, he's relatively still cool because that's what we're seeing. That's why you're just now seeing a lot of magicians dressed like I am right now with a bunch of tattoos and wearing black, and like leather and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
That was cool back in the day. We just figured out that's cool.
Okay.
So it's really hard because we're still trying to like define ourselves as an identity that feels like authentic and real and sharing
Hmm.
that with the world that matches culturally with it. But I would say like, a big entryway of just like if you want feel good feelings is Justin Millman, right? All of his work that he's done has done a great job of doing a good job of like making magic feel approachable and presentable to be able to do that. There was the Fooling show, Michael Carbonaro. for a long, long time. He tried to bring magic to the mainstream in a prank-like show.
Yeah, yeah.
And it didn't work because nobody knew who he was. So when he would reveal himself, everyone's like, okay. But he brought magic to the forefront, right? Instead of just doing cups and balls, how we've always done it, right, out of the beginner entry level magic tricks, he turned it into a scenario that felt real. So he's really, really good. If you want to see good magic in the performance of sleight of hand or the art of magic, right, with a capital A, you have magicians like Ossie Wind out of New York, who's really, really good to be able to see. You have the venues like Chicago Magic Lounge or Speakeasy Magic. You have Smoke and Mirrors down in Nashville, right, which is a really, really good venue to see. The YouTube channel I've been really enjoying watching lately has been Genius and Poison, because it's a lot of the best of magicians of our time and era right now, and most magicians who are actually shockingly under the age of 40 on that show doing amazing magic. Like I would say like all of those give the best gamut of what magic is right now and the best it can be.
And how do you then coach someone to appreciate magic more? I mean, I think, anyone can be like, wow, that was a cool trick, and then they don't think twice about it. But like, what do you look for to be like, watch for this or appreciate that or listen to the narrative or think about how they structure the trick? Do you have some kind of, how do I go about appreciating magic more tips?
The biggest thing that I always tell people is don't try to figure it out, right? Because the minute you figure it out, so in magic, there's this theory of what we call false solutions. And so when we're curating or designing a magic trick, the goal is to remove any idea of any false solution. Because psychologically, what happens in your brain is that the minute you come to this is how something is done, your brain locks into that. And so every single vantage point you see of a magic trick is that you're viewing it from that vantage point, right? So if you think that I've taken a ball, right, and I've hidden it in my hand like this, now, no matter where this hand goes, you will watch that hand and watch it and assume that's where the ball goes.
Right.
So now you can't be fooled because your brain is trying to rationalize, and it's going to be wrong, but your brain is going to rationalize like, oh, he took the ball, he put it into his coat pocket, it fell down a chute, then went into his pants, right? That then had a spring that popped it into his hand again. Like your brain won't let go of that.
Yeah.
So the first thing is never think about the solution. Go in with an open mind, right? Go with the beginner's mind of anything is impossible. Let it happen. The second thing is that really listen to the magician itself. A lot of the times scripting of magicians are bad. It's either hack jokes, but a lot of the times they'll set the conditions of the reality for you. Trust them that they are telling the truth there, right? Oh, they're coming for you, David.
It's going to happen. Yeah. So.
But the whole entire idea is that the magician, we don't lie to you. We just kind of move the truth a little bit. So when they're telling you the conditions of reality of it's a fully shuffled deck of cards, right? Or there's nothing inside of the box, believe them, right? Allow yourself to believe that that reality is true of whatever they're saying, because then that creates the impact that you want to see in enjoyment, rather than being all like, well, clearly there's something in the box. No.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's a suspension of disbelief. I mean, you go watch The Lord of the Rings. If you spend your whole time trying to figure out how they did the special effects, I mean, that's a fun activity. But when you watch the movie, you just accept that those are hobbits, those are elves, they're fighting orcs.
Yeah. And I mean, like, look at a great example, right, in Game of Thrones, right, with the Starbucks cup, right? That completely destroyed, and I personally believe that was the downfall of that series,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, fair enough.
Saw that, right, because it broke the suspension of disbelief, right? That became then a film set. And that's kind of the same thing in magic, right, is that if you have to allow yourself to be there. Now, that being said, this sounds like we're trying to, like, make excuses for the art form, right, of like, oh, just let it go. Good magicians will create a scenario.
They'll get you there.
That will get you there. Mediocre magicians will do a really, really good job of entertaining you. Bad magicians, they just haven't learned this stuff yet, right? Or are unable to learn it. But the whole entire goal of all of them is the same. So if you treat them all the same, right, the art form becomes more forgiving, right? And it gives you access to be able to go and find better work that will fool you, rather than just disowning it completely when you see something bad or fail.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last kind of line of questions here, and this is really more for the people that are like, I always thought it'd be fun to learn a trick, and I want you to think about a trick either that you can pick up out of a book or you can go buy at a magic store. That you just think is a great kind of have in your pocket beginner trick. And I'll go first. I think if you're fortunate enough to have a magic shop in your town, walk in, ask for a demonstration of scotch and soda, and if you like it, buy it. It's a great beginner trick, super fooling. It's fun. You're not going to get hired to do nightclubs, but you'll definitely impress your friends.
Yeah. I would say scotch and soda or any kind of like easy coin trick, right? There's the nickel and dime case. There's a couple of other things, the cone, a couple of just like entry level tricks where something will, like learning a card trick is great, but you have to understand the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
Learning an entry level coin trick is that you will, without doing anything, you will see a coin physically change from silver to gold, right? Or something along those lines. And to just do that real quick is a very, very impossible feeling of a moment.
Yeah, it's great. And if you can't get to a magic store, you can always go to an online shop. But I think I would discourage people from seeing a trick and buying it to find out how it's done. I think we're back to the if you want to go to a shop and ask for a trick that describe what you want, and then you learn how to do it, and then go do it. Show it to people, and then try to come up with a story. Or what did you say? Create that suspension of disbelief, that moment of unreality, those
Yeah.
places where wonder can be experienced.
And if we ever come back, I mean, we could deep dive down into that when we have, this is the art of fun, right? So if we talk about like the immersive and experiential, we could go way down that path to be able to do it too. But one of the things that like for me, when I was growing up, what they always told us for like beginner magic is you would go to the library because the library always has entry level magic books, and you could go in there and get like Mark Wilson's Encyclopedia of Magic. You can, get John Hugard, right, Expert Card Technique. There are like a handful of books that are publicly accessible. And I used to be a big believer in telling people that. But as I get older, I've realized no, because again, that requires you to learn skill. And I think when people are first starting to learn magic is they need to understand what that feeling of that instant gratification feeling is, right? So one, it's the cleverness of understanding how like a entry level, scotch and soda trick works. You're like, ooh, that's clever. But to experience that in your hand and to watch someone do that and get that immediate result, that's what will lead you down the path to wanting to learn the skill, right? Not the other way
Absolutely.
around.
So I think at the end, just to kind of wrap up, I think you're saying the fun of magic really is in the delightful experience of the impossible, and everything should be an input into that. The experience you take away should be that, and that's the fun. The fun is that you get to see something impossible happen right in front of you.
Yeah, always. And the fun is seeing a different audience, right? And it's so cool because it's if you do magic right, you're seeing it for the first time every time. It's one of the few art forms where every time I do a trick, it's for somebody new, so I'm experiencing it for the first time with them. And that will make this, art form for me last for forever.
There you go. All right, so one last thing, lightning round. Short, one sentence answers to hard questions. You ready?
Go for
Okay, the first one is, what's the most overrated thing in magic culture?
it. Products.
Oh, like tricks, buying tricks?
Yeah, buying tricks. We release on average, I think it's between
Oh,
150 to 200 tricks a month.
wow, that's a lot. Okay, second question. Second of three. What's harder, fooling people or moving them?
That's a great question. Fooling people. It's easy to get people to have an emotional connection with something. It's hard to try to fool someone and keep that fooling going on for forever.
Okay, great. And now, here we go. This is your penultimate short answer question. Not the penultimate, this is the ultimate. If magic had the same prestige as opera, what would change tomorrow?
Oh man, you could charge really high ticket prices and people would buy tickets to shows.
There you go. There you go. Well, thanks a lot, James. Appreciate it. I will put your website in the show notes. And if you're in Denver, look up James. He does shows, he runs events. And we'll get back and we'll talk about immersive the next time. And so that's magic. It's a pleasure talking to someone like James, someone who actually practices an art form, which actually I think is pretty much the heart of something fun. That childlike wonder that he described, that ambiguity of meaning that invites you in to decide what it means to you. Does it mean the world is more complex than you think it is? Is it that there's unknowable things in the world, that the supernatural is possible, or just that, being tricked is actually kind of fun rather than feeling really like something that you don't want to happen in your normal life? Regardless, magic is this wonderful practiced art form that I do think deserves more attention than it gets. I think that James really hits the nail on the head when he suggests that you kind of just have to give yourself into it. Don't look at the magician as some sort of gatekeeper of secrets and technologies that you're not allowed to have, but instead think of them as a movie magician, so somebody like a Peter Jackson, who uses special effects to create fantastic realms that you get to exhibit. And I think, the other thing about having fun with magic is really as simple as just enjoy it. Look it up online. There's tons of it. Go to a magic show. Go to a magic shop. Really just enjoy being fooled by something that's impossible happening right in front of you. Or go learn a magic trick. I think that that's a fun thing to do. Yes, you can be that funny, weird uncle or aunt that shows up and amuses the nieces and nephews by pulling rabbits out of hats and making coins appear from their ears, or whatever you choose. Anyway, yes, there is a history of magic being a little bit cliched and hackneyed, but I don't think that's really the heart of magic any more than, tap dancing defines all of dance. Magic is a wide, open art form that's existed for thousands of years, and I think in our era of technological wonders, there's no better time than to just go experience someone making something appear. All right, I hope you had fun. We'll look forward to finding more fun as we try to answer the fun question.